Welcome everybody back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. It is Smackdown Lowdown time. On the show, we will look back over Smackdown this past weekend, and in all honesty, this was a tape Smackdown that they done after last week. So they taped two shows last week, and Smackdown, to be honest with you, over the last couple of weeks, so the Bloodline bits have been good and Cody, but it's been really flat. And I don't know what the issue is here with it, but it feels as though, this week on SmackDown, for argument's sake, three matches. One of them was a long tag team gauntlet match, which you can get away, but three matches on a show. There was a lot of build to SummerSlam. Obviously, SummerSlam coming up this very weekend. Looking forward to that. I will grant you there, but yeah, SmackDown was just weak this week. I know there was a tour of Japan. This was they taped this after the show last week. So very disappointing on SmackDown at the minute. I'm not sure. Hopefully, with return of Roman Reigns, we may be able to get, the show may pick up a bit. And I have said before that SmackDown I've always felt is difficult at the minute with the fact that it is so bloodline heavy. You don't get a lot of, it's difficult when the bloodline and stuff is taking up so many segments of a show to get other people over, to create other storylines. And they're trying to do the best they can do, but the show is still heavily bloodlined, that it's just so difficult. It did actually start with the bloodline. Nick Aldis, was with the Bloodline, and they were talking about the tag team tournament, which is called a tag team gauntlet, which is coming up today or coming up on SmackDown later, and the winners will get a tag team title shot next week. Now, what he did say was that Tanga Loa, I believe, had a patch over his eye, and he wasn't cleared to compete, so they wouldn't be able to basically be in the tag team gauntlet match. Solo stopped him and said, "Well, hang on a minute, Tama Tonga's here. Jacob Fatu is here. There's the tag team that are going into the tournament." And Nick Aldis agreed with that. That was fine. And they would be in that tag tournament. A little bit later on, LA Knight did cut a promo. He did beat Santos Escobar, Logan Paul, attacking him after that. Again, it was kind of like, and I think sometimes when you're at wrestling shows as well, and they do the sort of double taping, it is very difficult for the crowd to stay invested in some of this as well. So this was a very awkward SmackDown because of that reason as well. But LA Knight did take on Santos Escobar in a contest. He did beat Santos Escobar in the one-on-one match on SmackDown. It was a good match. Santos Escobar is very talented indeed. LA Knight is getting ready for that United States Championship match this at SummerSlam this coming Saturday. Logan Paul with the attack afterwards. We've said this before. We mentioned it even on last week's SmackDown that it would have to be now or never, I think, for LA Knight. If they don't pull the trigger on the United States Championship on him this coming Saturday at SummerSlam, especially if it's a clean finish, and that's one thing that we would have to say. Logan Paul has used the brass knucks on several occasions. If it happens to be a clean finish, then I'm not sure where LA Knight goes from there, to be quite honest with you. That's something that we would have to certainly take a look at. And we always say the same thing with Joe Hendry. I know he's going to be on NXT this week, but LA Knight has to win at SummerSlam, or at least not lose cleanly. For that momentum to carry on, because it is doing, say it's dwindling a bit. He's still getting the reactions, he's still got the chance going, but there has to be a point in which WWE say, right now we need to give you that opportunity to get in there and get the job done. But we'll see what happens. LA Knight does beat Santos Escobar. Logan Paul does beat him afterwards, and that sets up SummerSlam this weekend, SummerSlam. Looking very much forward to that for sure. But yes, Logan Paul, LA Knight, United States Championship. The tag gauntlet was actually really good. There was a lot of teams involved in this as well. Obviously, the Bloodline was in there. Street Profits, they went a long way in this tournament as well. I always say with these things, with these tag tournaments, because it is difficult, because it's going to be so long. It is so long, and the bloodline being involved in it, you kind of gathered where it was, but it was the bloodline, it was Liga del Fantasma, it was Street Profits, the Good Brothers, Pretty Deadly, Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin. That's what it was. Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin, and Ligo del Fantasma started the match off. Baron Corbin and Apollo Crews got the victory there. Then the Street Profits come in. They got rid of Baron Corbin and Apollo Crews. They got rid of Pretty Deadly. They got rid of the Good Brothers, who we hadn't seen in ages. They've been down on NXT, actually. And that's a good use of them, I think. If they've gone down NXT, doing what they need to do down there. Very, very good for the OC in there, but didn't get the job done here. The Street Profits went all the way to the end before, of course, the Bloodline, Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga getting the victory. Jacob Fatu, and we said this. I said this about a wrestler last week on that. Forgive me, I can't remember who. But he's an absolute blue chip stud. If he isn't a singles champion within a year, 18 months, WWE are not using him correctly. He is an absolute star. The stuff that he can do in that ring is scary. And I certainly wouldn't, I certainly would be using him right at I think they've got it right at the minute, but I do think that Jacob Fatu is an absolute superstar, and they need eventually for him to become, a single star in the WWE. At the moment, it is a tag team with him and Tama Tonga. It'd be interesting to see if they use that team next week. I'm pretty sure that they will now with it was an eye injury, I believe, for Tanga Loa. He had a patch on his eye. Not sure if that's a legitimate injury or a storyline injury. By the way, not read much about it, but he wasn't medically cleared. So Fatu took in, and Fatu got the victory after the moonsault on Montez Ford. The Street Profits, though, I feel as if they've been on a bit of this whole thing. I know they're with Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley's seemingly leaving the WWE, and it kind of leaves the Street Profits in a bit of a no sort of in limbo, really. Where are they going to be? What are they going to be doing? Um, and I'm really not sure if I'm totally transparent. I don't know where that leads. I thought the heel turn that was planned for the Profits and they did try to do was going to work, but it hadn't done. They was getting cheered, so they had to make Lashley's group a face. I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like right now they're just in no man's land right now in the tag team division. They're not going to win the tag team titles, obviously. They're always over. The crowd love them. They're so good. Montez Ford is definitely, the star there. Although Natalia keeps saying about how great Angelo Dawkins is as well. So he's one, I don't think the WWE showcases Dawkins enough. I think because, of how good Montez is, they kind of, getting him to have the majority of the limelight, so to speak, in there. But yeah, the Street Profits are in limbo at the minute. I'm not sure what's going to be on the horizon. But then obviously they've got B-Fab with them as well. I don't quite know how that ends up, or how that ends, shall we say, for the Street Profits. It's a very tricky situation with Lashley leaving. Obviously, MVP wasn't a part of that group, but with Lashley, MVP, and that going, unless something changes with Lashley and he re-signs, which is unlikely from what we hear, it is pretty much a limbo moment for the Street Profits. Hopefully they won't get lost too much. I have said before that Smackdown is difficult if you're not a part of the Bloodline story. And you're not going to be, because this, potentially this coming Saturday, Roman Reigns returns, and that starts the next chapter in the Bloodline story. And perhaps that won't even be. See, and this is the thing, and this is another thing, and slight aside to that is, does that push that championship down a bit? We were talking on Raw about how maybe Damian Priest's title has not been made much significance over, the women's championship maybe not been in significance because of the storylines going on around it. Are we heading that way with Cody? Because obviously once the solo match finishes, assuming Cody retains, Roman comes back and he starts the infighting with Solo. We've then got a bit of a problem because Cody Rhodes is meant to be front and center of the show as the champion, but the Bloodline have been dominant on SmackDown for so long, the story's been on for so long, that always seems to take precedence. So what happens when the bloodline when Cody's back because they've got a champion now that's not part of the bloodline, and he may not be invested in that, or he may not be in that storyline much further after something. They might have a few bits where Cody even teams with Roman against the bloodline, but sooner or later, Cody would need to have a new challenger, whoever that may be. Could it be Randy Orton? Could it be Logan Paul? Even could it be someone else like that? And then does that then make the importance of the world title diminish because it's not front and center of the show because the bloodline is? And you could argue that Cody Rhodes' championship reign hasn't been that great because of the stuff with the bloodline kind of taking the importance away, because of the importance of that, it's taken the WWE Championship and knocked it down a peg because it's not a part of the big storyline on SmackDown or the biggest storyline on SmackDown in the last 3 or 4 years. So that's an interesting one with that. And maybe they've put so much effort into booking the bloodline stuff that even because we even said before, Cody's title reign hasn't been great. And that's not because Cody hasn't been great. It's the booking. Some of these matches have been rushed together. Some of them, he hasn't had what I would say like a feud, a proper 3 4 month kind of feud. He's kind of come back with a bloodline now with Solo after beating Roman, but Roman never got his rematch either. So like since Mania, Cody's been just sort of given AJ Styles, he's been given a couple of other matches here and there, but he's not been in like an invested feud in ages. And then Solo comes along with 3 weeks of SummerSlam build. I know that they come out at the end of the pay-per-view and sort of motion to him that they were going for him, but you only had 3 weeks between Money in the Bank and SummerSlam, and to build a feud like that, if it's going to be a long feud, you would have started it in a different way, and perhaps your match wouldn't have been at SummerSlam with Solo, it would have been maybe one of the others. But because of the impending return of Roman Reigns, you're kind of in limbo a little bit with that, and I just wonder if that's going to affect Cody's title reign a tad. But we'll find out. Let's find out. Let's find out from SummerSlam this weekend. But the news coming out for SmackDown this week is there's going to be 2 championship matches on the show, both for the men's and the women's tag teams. We'll get into that very, very shortly. But the Bloodline are going against DIY. You would put money really on the Bloodline winning this match somehow, potentially. There was a segment with Waller, Theory, and Crawford, Terence Crawford. It's an NBA or whatever he is. Anyway, apologies, Terence. I just don't watch your sport. The Grayson Waller, Austin Theory seem to be going through the motions again, and Theory gets knocked out, Waller runs, and you just kind of like, again, it's like, well, just turn them, just get that out of the way, because if you don't, it's kind of like if you don't finish it off soon, people are getting bored already, and they're kind of waiting for it because you can see it coming. And if you can see it coming and people ain't that invested in it, I think sometimes just pull the trigger on it and get it done, and then it will be a lot better. You can at least then move on to Theory versus Waller, and Austin Theory babyface run could work. I mean, we'll have to, it's one of those ones that you have to wait and see. You've got to test the waters with some of this stuff, right? And I feel as if though you can't long this one out too long. It's been on the horizon for at least 4 to 6 weeks, probably even since they won the tag championships. It's been on the card, so just like let it go and just let them go for it and see what happens with Austin Theory. See if he can do it as a baby face. I still think to this day that the John Cena promo killed Austin Theory. Absolutely killed him as a heel at that point. He hasn't really recovered from it, in my opinion. He's been absolutely battered, really, from it. So hopefully Austin Theory and his babyface turn hurries up, and we can see what it's like in the crowd reaction and how he gets on with it. But he got knocked out by Terence Crawford. Grayson Waller done another runner. Surprise, surprise. The main event, and this is what I mean, this is how quick 3 matches went. Tiffany Stratton, Nia Jax, Bayley, and Mi Chin. Obviously, last week, Mi Chin picked up the victory in her match. Bayley decimated Tiffany's briefcase, if you remember. Nia Jax earlier in the night said, if you help me win the match, we'll get you a new briefcase to Tiffany Stratton. And actually, lo and behold, they did. That annihilator move from Nia Jax is absolutely incredible to see. I love that move that she hits. And I think it's because of her her look, her size, and that's not, I'm not being horrible or disrespectful when I say it, but with her size, that move has so much more impact. If you remember the one that she gave Lara Valkyria at Queen of the Ring, it looked like it killed her. Do you know what I mean? And it was so good. And Nia Jax is really, I know people will still come out and say, she's reckless, she's not that good. She's doing her best work in WWE right now. There is no doubt about it. She's on a great run right now, on a great roll. And I may be thinking that she does win the match at SummerSlam, and perhaps Tiffany cashes in on her, uh, rather than Bailey. Just because Nia is like, yeah, I'll get you a new briefcase. It'll look great and all that sort of stuff. She does all of that for Tiffany, only for Tiffany to cash in the briefcase on Nia Jax. It could well happen. Stranger things have happened in wrestling, right? And that's what you got to remember. And it's one of those things that that sometimes the element of surprise like that. I think the only disappointment would be is that both briefcases would then have been cashed in within 2 months of Money in the Bank. And that would be disappointing because I still like that thing as we move to the end of the year. Oh, the briefcase hasn't still been cashed in yet. That's why I like Damian Priest for so long. I know it went to WrestleMania, and that may be a bit too long, and I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit. But going from that to like two quick cash-ins, I like to have at least one as we push the end of the year because you've still got that whole, we could cash it in, or we could cash it in that. We still haven't got this to cash in. And it gives you another talking point on the show. But nevertheless, Tiffany and Nia win the tag team match. A new briefcase we made for Tiffany. Next week, or this week, sorry, this coming week on SmackDown, the Unholy Alliance, Alba Fire, Isla Dawn puts up the women's tag team championships against Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair in a rematch. And the Bloodline at the moment of Tama Tonga and Jacob Fatu will go against DIY for the SmackDown tag team championships. And that'll be the final stop before SummerSlam this weekend. Looking forward to that big time. Hopefully, the return of Roman Reigns. Hopefully, SmackDown will pick up as well. It is difficult, as I said before, with all of this bloodline stuff going on the shows. Seems to be feeling the ill effects of that right now. It did feel flat, this one. Didn't enjoy it as much as usual. It's been on a bit of a downward trend, although the ratings have been good. So what do I know, right? But guys, listen, it's been a bit of a whirlwind SmackDown review, partly because there wasn't a lot to talk about on this particular episode. So keep it locked on HTT Buckle on Twitter, Hit the Turnbuckle Podcast, all other social media platforms. Lots of review shows dropping this week. Battle of the Belts, Rampage, Collision, Raw, NWA, TNA. You guys are going to be blessed with a lot of review shows this week. Good luck getting through them all. But until then, guys, listen, this has been the Hitting the Turnbuckle Podcast and on the SmackDown review on the Hitting the Turnbuckle Podcast. And until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe. Goodbye.